morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. It is with immense pleasure and great honor that I, on behalf of the Institute of Chartered Professional Managers of Sri Lanka, extend to you a warm and heartfelt welcome to the 11th edition of the CPM International Management Conference. So, to start the conference and to invoke blessings, I would like to invite our dignitaries to light the oil lamp. So may I now invite the chief guest and the keynote speaker, Mr. Katsuki Kataro, the Minister, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Japan in Sri Lanka, and Professor Lakshman R. Vatavala, the founder and president of CPM Sri Lanka, and Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka, Head of Technical Sessions of the Conference and Governing Council member of CPM Sri Lanka. And following Governing Council members of CPM Sri Lanka, Mr. Bashir Ismail, Mr. Kosala Disanayaka, Mr. Henanayaka Bandara, Mrs. Gayani Punchiheva, Mr. Roshan Collis, Mr. Gayan Gunawardana, Mr. Asang Herat, Mr. Ruwan Sanjeeva, Dr. Chani Imbulgoda, the Session Chairman of the Session 1 of the Conference, and Dr. Ravi Bamnusingh, the Session Chairman of the Session 4 of the Conference, and Mr. Dishan Arsakularatna, the Director of CPM Sri Lanka. Thank you. Now to rise up for the national anthem, so please remain standing at your seats.
Sri Lanka Mata, Upper Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata, Sundara Siri හද තුල භක්ති ඔබ අප ආලෝකේ අපගේ අනුප්‍රාණේ ඔබ අප ජීවනවේ අප මුක්තිය ඔබ වේ නව ජීවන දෙමිනේ නිදින අප කුබුදු කරන්වාදා ඥාන දීන වඩවමින රැගෙන යනු මැන ජය මෝහි කරා එක මවකගේ ගනු කළ බැවිනා යමු යමු වී නොපමා ප්‍රේම වඩා සැමරේද දුරරලා නමෝ නමෝ මාතා අප ශ්‍රී ලංකා නමෝ 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 මාතා
Thank you. Let me now read the conference preamble. The message of the Institute of Chartered Professional Managers of Sri Lanka, known as CPM Sri Lanka, is always to alert members and corporate bodies to the need for the latest cutting-edge, advanced revolutionary thinking in management. People and companies are subject to continuous change. Unless managers learn to meet change and harness it for the good of the house in general and for the productivity in particular, they will be fighting a losing battle. This year, our conference on the theme Strategic Resurgence, Steering Sri Lanka's Management Landscape, will deliberate on how management thinking and practices have to be restructured and reinvented in line with the present context in Sri Lanka. So now, to welcome you all, I would like to invite Professor Lakshmana Vatavala, the founder and the president of CPM Sri Lanka, to the podium.
Good morning. Our chief guest and keynote speaker, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, the Minister, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Japan in Sri Lanka, the council members of CPM Sri Lanka, the chairman of the conference committee and governing council member, Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka, distinguished invitees, Mr. Atula Idrisinghe, the past president of Justica, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me, on behalf of CPM Sri Lanka, welcome you to this 11th CPM International Management Conference. We are just coming after our Best Management Practices Company Awards 2024, and I'm also happy to say that here again we had His Excellency Mitsukoshi Hideaki, as the chief guest, the ambassador for Japan in Sri Lanka. So this shows that this conference, which is on strategic resurgence, steering Sri Lanka's management landscape, is closely, and the Best Management Practices Company Awards 2024, is closely connected with the best management practices in Japan. So we are very fortunate to have today the chief guest, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, who will be with us, and I'm sure that he will be able to give an excellent address on not only on Japanese systems, but Sri Lankan and world affairs. I remember His Excellency talking about a very important event that took place. Really, it was the then finance minister and the former president, the late J.R. Jayawardena. He mentioned about that. I'm sure Mr. Katsuki Kotaro would also mention in the speech. That's on 6 September 1951, where at San Francisco Conference, at the Peace Treaty at the Assembly of 51 Nations. I think this was really a historic occasion, and where late President J.R. Jayawardena mentioned, hatred ceases not by hatred, but by love. This was what was preached by Buddha, and also that he was able to take this to this treaty, and this was really something that was appreciated by everyone, and which also gave freedom to Japan. A lot of them were wanting to put various qualifications, but the treaty enabled Japan to obtain its sovereignty, equality, dignity without any qualifications. So I think this is something that is remembered over and over again. When His Excellency the President J.R. Jayawardena was the president, Japan donated the hospital, 1,000 beds, and then when I told the ambassador it was 1,000, he said no, it was 1,001, which included one bed for Excellency President J.R. Jayawardena. So we are indeed grateful. I think so many others, our parliament, so many others that are there. But I think in this situation, I'm sure that Japan, because we are really in a very, very difficult situation, where due to lot of, I could say, management mistakes, that we have come to this situation. So that we will be able to get your guidance, your support in reviving not only our economy, but also the society. Because ultimately, people think of economy, but it's the society and the people who really have to make a contribution to the economy. So I'm indeed thankful, and I must also thank Mr. Atula Idrisinghe for the great role he played in obtaining both the High Commissioner and Mr. Katsuki Kotaro for this conference. So as I said, it has a lot of meaning, and I mentioned yesterday also that we have to really make use of the management principles, the management practices, and of course the most important thing of management, the accountability and the responsibility. Today I was reading the newspapers. In the front page it says that 33% of the conditions laid down by the IMF have not been met. So what I would suggest is that we have to make everyone accountable and responsible. If that is there, then this 33% will be responsible and accountable for what happens. So it has to come not from the people who are lower down, but it has to come right from the top. From the president to the ministers, to the secretaries of ministries and the others who are operating. Because you know who are from the private sector. When you are given a job, you are not only responsible, but you are accountable for it. If you do not do it the proper way, if you do not give the return that is required, then I think they will take certain action. So that's what is required. because we can't just carry on. So that's why this conference is of great value. And yesterday we saw the best companies. I think today in our conference also, the excellent 5 will be making presentations. So this shows that they will be able to show exactly what they have done and made their companies successful. I'm also thankful to the foreign speakers, some of them who are here from Australia and also New Zealand, who have come all the way. Because this, I know the chairman was telling me that we really have to invite people who have gone overseas and they have really excelled and done well, where they can come and contribute to Sri Lanka. So this, I think, is a start where those who are living abroad will come to Sri Lanka and help us, especially in this time where we really want their support. But it all rests on all of us. It's not only us. And also, as I said earlier, the public service is of great importance, because whatever you do, if that is not being properly handled, we will be in great difficulty. So that's why I even mentioned yesterday that we have to ensure that the public service is independent. In India it is there, in other countries it is there. Prior to 1972 it was there when we had the Ceylon Civil Service, and it should be independent of the political system, where the politicians will frame the policies and the administration and work carried out would be done by the public sector. So I think this conference has really put into place how management should be done, not only in organizations, the private sector and the public sector, but also throughout the country in the public sector, and of course the SME sector. If you talk to anyone in the banking sector, there might be some of them who are here, they will tell you that they give the best rates to the big companies. I can see Mr. Conrad Dias here, he is laughing because he knows that, because they have very good management. But when it goes to the SME sector, they charge the highest rates. Their profits are coming from the SME sector. People are not talking. But why? What is the reason? That is because their management systems are very weak. Only the proprietor is there. He is doing everything. So then the banks do not have the confidence that they have in the big companies that have a proper management system. So these are matters that we should take into consideration. And I'm sure that the chartered professional managers, a professional body for the management profession is there. You could all join it. You can all contribute to it. And I'm sure that these practices that we are doing, the philosophies of management, which is there in all professions, could be taken together for the betterment of this country, and also to overcome any difficulties that we have. It is the best management practices that will help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vatawala. Now, to deliver the keynote speech, I would like to invite our chief guest and our keynote speaker, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, the Minister and the Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Japan in Sri Lanka, to deliver the keynote speech.
Professor Lakshma Vatawala, founder and president of CPM Sri Lanka, Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka, chairman of the committee, all governing council and advisory council members of CPM Sri Lanka, my friend, Mr. Atula Edrisinghe, trustee of Justica Trust and past president of Justica, all staff of CPM, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all. I'm indeed honored to be standing here on this very important occasion to not only just to share my views of how we see this strategic resurgence, but also I'm here more of a learning mode to learn from some of the best managers that this country has. I am standing here because of Professor Lakshma Vatawala and also Mr. Atula Edrisinghe. But I was thinking why I am asked to speak here. And I think it relates to the topic of this whole conference, strategic resurgence. because I think our development after the Meiji Restoration in the end of the 19th century, and also after World War II, our resurgence after that marks a kind of historical example of what people can do to overcome challenging times. But at the same time, as Professor Watuala mentioned, last evening, my ambassador was invited as a keynote speaker. And basically, I think what he explained was, especially in the context of post-World War II, how Japanese resurgence occurred and what kind of implications that has. So I don't want to duplicate and to waste your time in re-uttering what he mentioned. So today, rather, I'd like to focus more on, since we are gathering here in Sri Lanka, the current context of Sri Lanka, but also, I think if we talk about strategic resurgence, I think we have to bear in mind the current global and also contemporary perspectives. So first like to start from the context of Sri Lanka. And when we talk about the strategic resurgence, I think we have to start from the economy. And well, I arrived in Sri Lanka in September of 2021. And at that time, it was COVID lockdown. And then I think 2 months later, my ambassador arrived. And he was very fortunate. The moment he arrived, the COVID restriction was, curfew was raised, so he could move around. But then, so I was relieved that he arrived. And then I started looking into the facts and figures of the economy. And I was struck by the foreign currency reserve very drastically going down. So by the end of 2021, I was kind of more than sure that this country will have a very turbulent 2022. And I was asking the people in the government at that time who had knowledge and was responsible in dealing with those things. But at that time, the response was, well, we have a homegrown solution and everything will be all right. I think what we witnessed after that is that it wasn't all right. Well, I think a professor alluded upon management mistakes. I'm not sure how that happened. But in any case, this country was in a tough position, especially that it had to declare default in May, April to May of 2022. So then, as for Japan, how we were approaching this issue is that just as Professor Watuala mentioned, when Japan was in the deepest of troubles right after World War II, especially on the occasion of the San Francisco Peace Conference, then Finance Minister, Honorable J.R. Jayawardenna, made a speech which was very much in favor of welcoming back Japan into the world order in a very favorable way. And I think, yes, as Professor mentioned, we are very thankful of that. So when we were in deep trouble, Sri Lanka stood next to us. So we will stand firmly next to Sri Lanka to do whatever is possible in this situation. Then what we started to do was, number one is, of course, in that kind of situation, the only remedy that one can take is to have the IMF pills. You have to swallow it. So then, well, the IMF team was approaching Sri Lanka end of 2021. And since then, we have been talking to them very closely. Through those engagements, what we found out was that IMF was very much willing to support Sri Lanka, overcome whatever difficulties. And sometimes people demonize IMF. And I read a lot of the Sri Lankan newspapers, and sometimes they are very unpopular. But from everything that I know, they are very much open-minded. And also, I kind of would explain them as like a doctor, because Sri Lanka as a patient became very ill, extremely ill. So if you become ill, firstly you have to sleep well, and you have to take certain pills, and you have to maybe eat less, carbs and sugar, eat more vegetables, exercise more. And basically what the IMF says is exactly that. So since both foreign currency dried out, also the budget deficit was huge. So you have to increase the revenue and then the cut government expenditures. And basically that's what they are telling. So but at the end of the day, how to do that is very much up to the Sri Lankan government and the people of Sri Lanka. So basically, IMF is there to, it's like a doctor, tell you what you have to do. And I think in everyday life, we run our own families. I think that's exactly what you do. You make sure that you have enough earnings, and the expenditure, you will always bear in mind how much you are earning. So, so the same thing applies to a country. And I think IMF is there to help you, especially when you're in a tough situation. So we were very much reaching out to IMF and also coordinating with them very closely, and to somehow overcome the situation. And also, I think in the context of Sri Lanka, if a middle-income country fails and defaults and really starts sinking, it could have started a kind of domino effect, because there are many other middle-income countries which, under very harsh situation during the past few years, are also in difficult situation. So I think the whole international community was determined to help Sri Lanka. And then the other difficult part is the debt restructuring, because at the end of the day, this economic crisis was caused because there wasn't enough foreign currency in either finance or central bank. So at the very end, what I heard, I think, from the people in the government knowledgeable about this, April 2022, I think at a certain point they only had around $10 million cash available to settle the needs. $10 million, even one company might have that amount of cash. So a sovereign state and the government only had that liquidity in April of 2022. So you can see how serious it was. So the government chose to do a soft landing, so declare a default and start restructuring. So in order to do that, theoretically, there are several ways to do it. And the first thing that occurred to our mind was G20, because the G20 has a common framework, and it is applied to the least developed countries. So the creditors will have a certain way to treat debt issue for the least developed countries. But Sri Lanka, since is a middle-income country, has already kind of graduated from that least developed country status. That cannot be applied. So one thing was to expand the G20 common framework to include countries like Sri Lanka. But then unfortunately, spring of 2022, as we were thinking about that, the war in Ukraine started. So the whole G20 process was struggling to keep unity. So there was no room to delve into expanding the G20 common framework. So that didn't work out. Then logically, the other option would be to work with the fellow creditors so that we can treat Sri Lankan debt and come out with a solution in the swiftest way possible. And that was the course we chose. In September of that year, after the current president became president, he flew to Japan in September, and he met our prime minister. And basically what he asked us was to help Sri Lanka on this debt restructuring. And then the following day, he flew to Manila, where there was the Asian Development Bank annual meeting. And our finance minister, Mr. Suzuki, was in Manila. So President flew to Manila, and in his capacity as a finance minister, met our finance minister and asked the same thing. So that kind of triggered us starting to really work on this. And what we did was we established this official creditors committee. And basically all the government creditors are there. But the major creditor for Sri Lanka is China. So we invited them as observers. Ideally, if they had joined, that would have been okay. But having them as observers and kind of sharing our information to them, we were hoping that as the major creditor, they can also take a constructive role and have no suspicion on what others like us was thinking. So that, I think, we were kind of successful because last year, 2023, towards the end of November, we were able to come to an agreement in principle on the treatment of our government credit, debt that Sri Lanka owes to us, and we agreed on the treatment. So, in a sense, I think this is like a Guinness Book of Record swiftness in achieving this. And I think behind that scene, so IMF was working hard, the creditors were working hard, but also I think Sri Lankan government did its part. So this process is absolutely important. And if we talk about the strategic resurgence, I think the economy, keep the economy going upwards is the only way to achieve that in this current context of Sri Lanka. And for that, I think, I've been observing this whole process past 2 years. I think it's fair to say that unfortunately at this moment there's no other option apart from taking this IMF reforms and also working on the debt restructuring. Hopefully, the commercial creditor side of this debt restructuring will also, the negotiations are going on from what we know, and hopefully sooner rather than later, there will be agreement on the treatment. Then that will lead to the successful conclusion of the debt restructuring process. And after the debt restructuring process is concluded, then sovereign ratings will come up, and then access to finance for the companies that you all work for or are running will have access to that. So to make this process actually bear fruit is, I think, the basis of future development of this country. So reality, I mean, looking at all the realities, whatever the political discourse is, I think the economic reality is, as I mentioned. So hopefully, this year is a very important year, it seems, and people are talking that there might be some big elections. And at the end of the day, the people of Sri Lanka will decide on who will be governing this country. But as an outsider and as a person who has been observing this whole process of Sri Lanka coming back on the economic side, hopefully whomever will be in power will continue certain basic features of this IMF program and also the debt restructuring. And I am very hopeful and confident that the people would make such choice. Then, since there are many corporate executives and managers here, we have to touch upon the companies. And as Professor Watawala mentioned, there are listed companies, mainly big companies, and also I think there are non-listed companies and many SMEs. I think starting from the listed companies, both the Tokyo Stock Exchange recently, it hit a record height, and first time in about 30 years. Here, Colombo Stock Exchange is also doing quite well. So I think the big companies in general, in this very tough situation, are doing, very quite well. But at the same time, I think the SMEs, and in Japan, in fact, the SMEs account to more than 99% of the number of companies. And here in Sri Lanka, I hear that it's around 75%. So this sector, for the resurgence of the economy, you need a healthy SME sector. That applies both in Japan but also here in Sri Lanka. Then how exactly to achieve that is a tough issue. I think Professor Watawala just alluded upon, like interest rates, which of course, I mean, in general it's coming down. So hopefully that will give the whole corporate sector much ease in doing business. But especially how to make sure that the SMEs are kept afloat. And because at the end of the day, they absorb nearly half of the employment in this country. And once they are in trouble, it means there's instability in the society. So that's why it has to be dealt with in a good way. And at least in Japan, what we tried to do was we were kind of trying to assist, especially those SMEs who are taking a sustainable pathway, to kind of lend favorably or to kind of encourage local banks and financial institutions to, to have very close communication. Because those companies would have a better chance to thrive in the future if their sustainable business would continue. So we try to give incentive by working closely with the local government and local financial institutions to approach SMEs. And as I mentioned, it accounts to 99% of our companies in Japan, so that's quite a lot, so that's why we're doing it. Hopefully, I think Sri Lanka will come up with some kind of solution on that. And when I meet with the government officials, that's one topic that I always raise and seek their views and kind of urge and encourage to take some steps. Then also on the big companies. So I think this global trend for sustainable finance, I think is irreversible. And this ESG investing or impact investing, I think this has already become a huge trend. And well, in fact, it will, if you do it wisely, you can unlock trillions of dollars of money to your respective industries or to your company, especially through institutional investors putting their money, especially in the stock market. That's one typical way to do it. Then you can thrive. So I think for the big companies to utilize whatever possible means to try to make use of that sustainable financing movement that is happening, I think is absolutely important. So I think for the corporate sector, to summarize, I think sustainability would be the key word, and that will ensure the resurgence and also the sustainability of whatever business model that will continue. And then another thing, well, so on management skills, I think everyone here as chartered professional managers know even more than I do about how to approach this. And yesterday, I think my ambassador also mentioned about like Kaizen or 5S. And Mr. Atura Edrisinghe was chairing Justeka, which is championing, introducing Japanese management methods in the context of Sri Lanka. And I have also visited several factories that are actually applying that. So there's a lot of experience on that front, and Japan is committed to continue working on that front. But also, I think if we talk about strategic resurgence, we need a strategic management way of thinking. And so, well, I work for the government, so it's not totally identical in your context. But one thing that I try to do on this strategic management or strategic thinking, whatever you call it, is to whatever task you have at hand, I don't start from what we have been doing up to now or what resources I have at hand. I always think about what is the ideal situation, and don't think about what resources you have at hand at this moment. The best thing, what would it be? So to give an example, in the headquarters, when I was in charge of setting the agendas for the G20 Osaka summit back in 2019 and working for Prime Minister Abe, one thing, well, he was very interested in education, and I was in charge of the education agenda. So then, we, for the Japanese people to understand the importance of the agenda, it's better to have someone, a person. So then the people will, through that person, start to think about what the agenda means. And then at that time, well, my staff, I was asking, who would be, possible people, and they started listing. But they're okay, but they're like, some Japanese people or whatever. But then at the end, we chose to go for Malala, who is, she got the Nobel Prize. And at that time, she was doing her graduate studies at Oxford, but we had no contact of her whatsoever. But then, so somehow, we, got some kind of a contact, and then I just flew to London. And at first, she was supposed to be there, but then because she had classes at Oxford, she had some of her staff there. And I was kind of explaining, the importance of this G20 summit in Japan, and that we will put education as one of the cornerstones, because Japan's development strategy, in fact, I think the secret of it is that we have always been investing in human capital, and most typically through education and health. And the education part, so these two we will move forward and also highlight during the whole summit process. And especially education, well, health we are doing quite a lot. We are able to mobilize a lot of money. But the education in any country takes too much time, so politicians would not be too interested. So to get the resources is much more difficult for education. So thus, we need to highlight this, and we think that Malala is the best person to promote that. Well, the staff said, okay, okay. And then a couple of months later, I think during the UN General Assembly time, at that time also Malala was not able to come because she was doing her whatever at Oxford. But then the staff approached me in New York and said, okay, so Malala is basically, interested. But for her to come on board, she has certain things that she would like for us to take into consideration. So then we started talking, and then we were able to have her in Japan next spring as a featured guest for World Conference for Women. And so we were inviting all the women influencers, and as one of them, we invited her. And then our Prime Minister had a good chat with her, and then it materialized in agreeing upon a outcome document at the summit on human capital investment focusing on education. So this is just one example, but if you start from what you have, the impact will be limited. But if you think of what would be theoretically the best thing, you could achieve a little bit higher. So that's just one example. Also, I think in the context of why Japan is helping Sri Lanka, many friends ask me, Kotaro-san, why is Japan helping Sri Lanka? For me, of course, as I mentioned, Sri Lanka was next to us in our troubled times, so we will be that. But also from the strategic thinking, Japan is an island nation and dependent upon trade because we don't have enough resources to be self-sufficient and to keep our economy floating. So we need to do trade, and also we need to do investment abroad. And for that to happen, we need a very safe sea lines of communications. We hope that goods and service will flow freely, and that will guarantee our prosperity. So thus, we are very much committed. We need to get our crude oil, mostly 90% from the Middle East. So then that will be passing through the ocean. And Sri Lanka is located at the heart of this Indian Ocean. And also, on top of that, this country is blessed because both maritime sea lines and also air, it's located so beautifully that it's very hard to get another location that can do more on both fronts. So apparently, if a place like Sri Lanka becomes unstable and will not guarantee or be helpful in this logistics, then that will also have a negative impact on Japan. So from that strategic thinking, it's obvious that Japan needs to be close, or at least try our best so that the Sri Lankan people will be stable and prospering, and rather than collapsing or going downwards. So I think that's, so from our friendship, but also from strategic thinking, Japan will be committed to try in whatever means that we have to make sure that Sri Lanka will be in a good or stable situation. So this is like on Sri Lanka, but then I think briefly I'd like to touch upon a more broader global or more contemporary perspectives. So I think basically it's two things I'd like to, and one is like there are certain challenges to current existing world order. And most typically, recently we went through this COVID pandemic. And I think pandemics, unfortunately, will happen in the future. I don't think COVID will be remembered as the last pandemic that humankind has faced or will face. It will happen because if you look at how the antibiotics and how things are going, it's only natural that this will happen every now and then. So that means that whatever planning we are doing, we always have to bear in mind that one day a similar thing to COVID or even worse, or maybe luckily it might not be as negative as it was in COVID, but that might occur. So we always have to bear that in mind. And then also another man-made threat would be terrorism. This country also went through difficult times quite recently, and looking into what is happening in the Middle East these days. So it's always, we always have to bear in mind these things that happen. And on top of that, we have natural disasters, which is caused, is being enhanced due to climate change. And this country also went through a tsunami in 2004. And so these, man-made or human or natural disasters, we will have to face these challenges to the existing orders. But also, I think the global order itself is also starting to shift. And well, I joined the Foreign Service towards the end of the 90s. And that was, we regarded that as a post-Cold War era where there was a little bit of hope that major power cooperation will happen, and somehow after the Cold War we will have a new kind of stable and peaceful international structure that will allow all countries to develop and prosper. But I think, well, it's quite unfortunate that now I would say that now we have entered, recently, the past few years, we have entered this post-Cold War, where, in a sense, this rivalry has become very big, a little bit similar to what was happening in the Cold War era, two blocks and some countries in between. And now something similar is emerging. So we have to really be mindful how to navigate our international order in this time of difficulties. And unfortunately, what is happening in Ukraine and Gaza Strip just shows how much this post-Cold War might be, bring about actual harm and also difficulties. And all of us will suffer from whatever will happen. So these challenges to the existing order are there, and we have to cope with it, and managers have to bear that in mind. But also another thing is that there are certain new developments that might shift or overwrite existing order. And most typically, it will be, I think, information, communication, technology, ICT, and AI and robotics. So these combined brings us both chance and challenge. For the chance, in the context of Sri Lanka, one thing that pops up is that, well, this country lacks road infrastructure and also like railway also. So even though you have, like world heritage, many world heritages in this very small area, it takes hours to move around, which is the opportunity cost is too much. So one way is to, but still work on the infrastructure, road, trains, whatever. But if we, human drones, I think, is right around the corner. So another 10 years or so, people might be flying in the air, with something on their head or something like that. Or, in Japan, we have this manga. It's called Doraemon, and then this robot comes from the future, and he has this what is called a tachycopter. It's like a helicopter, and you put it on your head, and then people will fly in the air. So but literally, human drones, you'll be able to do that. So if you travel from Colombo to Kandy or somewhere with that human drone, by road it will take you, I don't know, depending on what time you go, 2.5 hours to maybe 4 or 5 hours. But that you will arrive in like 10 or 15, I don't know, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And so like a country like Sri Lanka, might be able to benefit from this, this radical technological improvement and innovation. Also Japan, for Japan, we are also an island country, and we are kind of narrow. We are long but narrow, so this will also help us. And the middle of our country is mountains. So we were making tunnels to get through, and we are very good at it. But I mean, maybe in the future we don't have to worry too much about tunnels. We can just do the human drone and go there. So this is the chance side. But rather, I'd like to pose a question at the very end. The challenge, and in my view, this AI, artificial intelligence, poses a big threat to everyone in this room. For instance, in the foreign ministry, we are trained in languages. So mine is Chinese. So English is my part-time job. And so, but then I think AI would do a much better translation than I can do. So my language skills will no longer qualify me as a professional. That's what's going to happen. It's not just language, many things that AI can do. So professionals will also be, will be challenged what we can do. So we really have to start thinking what the real value add for human beings will be left in this era of artificial intelligence. And it will be a drastic change, I think. But so I'm thinking of it a lot, and reading and speaking with people a lot on this. Just to throw the ball at you is unfair. So, for instance, one thing I'm looking into is how the citizens in ancient Athens how they were doing, because basically in those days economic activity was left to the slaves to do. So they didn't have to work to earn or to deal with economic activities. So what they were doing was basically politics, and then they were doing a lot of enjoying life, so drinking and going bathing and whatever. So I don't know, but why I'm trying to look into it is that it might give us a little bit of thought on what, if all the economic activity, including using the brain, will be done by AI or robots or whatever, then what will be really left for us? And this will be a really, really tough time. And I think it's, and also for all the managers here. So my final word would be, so I think managers will not have the luxury to be complacent. And I hope you will, with all this complexity that I have laid out here, you'll be able to bear that in mind and to guide your staff and your people for a better future. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kotaro, our chief guest and our keynote speaker today. And now, to deliver a special speech, I would like to invite Dr. Radhika Jayasundar Abevira, the Director of Data Science, Meta USA.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for having me in this esteemed forum. I'm hoping to share a little bit about data science, how data science can be a strategic imperative for professional managers in Sri Lanka, and also act as a catalyst for the Sri Lankan economy. I'm going to start with a brief explanation about what data science is, because it's a relatively new field. And then we'll talk about two examples of organizations that have used data science to change their the way of working, to change their culture. And then we'll go through some steps that an organization would want to take if they want to establish a data science function in their companies. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so what is data science? So data science is an intersection of three fields. So the first field is computer science. This is primarily because we are using computing power to analyze the large amount of data we are collecting, and we often use programming languages like Python to analyze our data. So that's the main use case of computer science in the field of data science. And the second field is math and statistics. And this is the foundation for all our analytical work. We use linear algebra, calculus, experimentation, causal inference, machine learning, regression. All these methods that we learned in math and statistics is used in data science to improve the analysis we are doing. And the third field is the domain or the business that you're applying the data science to. So it's really important as a data scientist, you understand the business KPI, the goals, the problems in detail to be able to collect the right data and analyze and provide meaningful recommendations. So in fact, I was talking to someone in the apparel industry who's a data scientist, and they were saying the first year of their data science job, they spent on the factory floor trying to learn how to sew and use the sewing machines. So that's the level of understanding you need to have when you want to apply data science into a business or a organization. So now that we understand what data science entails, let me explain, what data science do and what exactly is their job. So the most simplest form, data science helps businesses and governments make better decisions and solve hard problems. And they're responsible for understanding the problem in mathematical ways. So in very simple form, how do you write almost an equation to solve the problem? And oftentimes this requires the business knowledge we talked about. Then they collect the right data. So deciding what data to collect and collecting the data is a pretty big responsibility, and often data scientists will take this on. And then you clean the data, you store it in a privacy-safe way, and analyze the data to provide a meaningful recommendation on what steps the company should take. And this can be applied over and over again to different problems in the organization. You pretty much go through all 4 steps every time you are encountered with a problem that needs to get solved. One other data point I want to share here is the growth of the data science field. So data science has just started to emerge in the last 10 years. And according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're expecting data science field, which is this section, computer and information research scientists, which is essentially the data science role, they're expecting it to grow by 23% in the next 10 years, compared to computer occupations, which is going to grow by 14%, and other occupations, which are only going to grow by 3%. So why are we seeing this growth of data scientists? The main reason is now data science used to be a tech-only profession, but it has expanded outside the tech industry. Almost every industry, from manufacturing to agriculture to transportation, higher education, almost every industry now use data science to improve their operations, to improve their decision making, and basically improve their ROI. And the reason for that is the data collection, transmission, and processing has evolved in the last decade, and this has enabled the real-time data analysis and decision making. It also has made data analysis more affordable for companies, so that it's not just the big tech giants that are able to do data science, but also even small, medium businesses can benefit from this. So when we say data collection, it's not just the data that you transmit through your laptop or your phone. It's also the data that's been collected through connected devices. So we call them Internet of Things or IoT devices, like this one, which is a CCTV camera that is connected, that sends data on real time. Also this sewing machine that's connected, sends data in real time. The soil sensor, which measures the pH balance in the soil, the moisture, the fertilizer content in the soil, that sends data in real time, as well as credit cards, satellites, drones. Basically, anything that's connected and collecting data can be used for data analysis. So that's one part of the kind of equation that has changed that enable the data science function. The second one is the computing power. The ability to store large amounts of data and analyze them in real time. So these days we measure computing power in zettabytes. That's 1 trillion gigabytes. So you can imagine how big and servers are, how much of capacity that they're able to process in real time. So these two changes had enabled the data science, and it has enabled almost every industry to make use of data science. So now that we understand what data science is and how it's growing, we'll talk about two examples from two different industries on how they have used data science to improve their operations. So the first example is from Siemens. So Siemens is a medical technology company. They also build other things. As with any manufacturing company, they run into maintenance issues of their equipment. When equipments fail in the factory floor, everybody in the factory floor is going to slow down. They're going to reduce productivity. So what they did was they started collecting data about their equipment through IoT devices that measures the wear and tear of the different parts of equipment. And they used a predictive maintenance approach to using data science to predict, when an equipment is about to fail so that they can maintain it, they can do the maintenance ahead of time. As a result of this, Siemens reported 20% reduction in unplanned downtime and a 15% increase in overall equipment effectiveness. And then all of this ladded up to a 25 million annual cost saving in maintenance expenditure. And they are directly attributing this to the data science-based predictive maintenance approach that we talked about. So this is just one of many examples of how the manufacturing industry is changing the way they do the operations using data science. And there's many more examples. If you go online, you can find them. It's quite remarkable how much data has changed the way these companies are operating. So the second example I want to share with you is in a different industry in agriculture, just to show the span of impact that data science is having across multiple industries. So this example is from Federos, which is the National Federation of Rice Growers in Colombia. So as you all know, agriculture is one of the volatile industries. It's no different in this example. So the Colombian rice farmers were experiencing declining yields due to climate variability and pest infestation. And they were collecting a lot of data in the last 2 decades. The Colombian government was collecting data through satellites, through soil sensors, through drones, but they were not really using it in a way that the farmers can, make use of it. So what the Federals organization did was they partnered with CIAT, which is the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, and they basically was able to predict a dry spell before it happens. So in this example, they were able to predict a dry spell in Cordoba, which is in the northern part of Colombia, and they recommended the farmers to delay planting of rice. And about 170 farmers followed this advice and planted seeds during the window they recommended. And when they evaluated the outcome of it, they found that the farmers who delayed the planting avoided a crop loss of over 3.6 million USD and fared significantly better than their neighboring communities that planted according to the usual schedule, which is based on experience as opposed to based on data. And this is just, again, one of many examples in agriculture where data is revolutionizing the way they do make decisions and do their farming activities. So these are 2 examples. I'm going to now move on to the final slide, which is going to talk about how we can leverage data science in our organization if we don't have a data science function already. So as with anything, like everything starts with people. So for you to establish a data science function, you really need to think of it as a cultural shift in the organization. And it does take time because you need to change the way the company is operating. And the other thing I would say is, and something we always use in our companies, data should have a seat at the table. And what we mean by that is the data science function should be able to do the analysis and bring that information to critical decision making. So in my organization in the past, we used to report into the product development team, so product and engineering team. So there was a clear hierarchy between the product development engineering leadership and the data science team. And sometimes when we have a certain analysis done, we cannot always bring it to the leadership's attention. So what they did was they moved the data science and all the analytical functions under the chief operating officer and basically had equal say for the data science across other departments. So we'll sit at the table with finance, with engineering, with operations, with marketing to provide our point of view. And sometimes their point of view is to support a certain initiative or to provide a different alternative. But whatever it is, it's really important that the data science function has that same influencing power in the organization. And to enable that, you need to hire the right talent to champion this change. And as with anything, like I said, it starts with the people. So that's the first, I would say, the ingredient of establishing a successful data science function in an organization. The second one is collecting the right data. So it is very tactical, but making sure that we are answering the right questions and the data is going to answer those questions is really important. If you might be already collecting data in the organization, which is great. If not, you might have to invest in collection of data and ensuring that the data is of high quality. So that would be the second kind of ingredient in creating a data science organization. The third one is investing in secure data storage and computing power. Like I said, it's one thing to collect the data, it's another thing to store it in a privacy safe way and also analyze it in real time. So you might want to have your own servers or purchase server space to AWS or some organization like that allows you to rent servers to analyze the data. And the final kind of thought I want to share here is that it's really important to think of data science function and establishing data science function as a marathon and not a spirit sprint because it does take a lot of cultural changes for it to be successful. So I would recommend starting small with 1 or 2 projects before investing in the things that I mentioned above. just because it is costly to establish the data science function. And if you don't quite know what you're going to get out of it, I would start small. Either you work with an external consultant, or if you already have a team that kind of doing the data science work, start working with them to run a few projects to see how best that you can leverage this the field in your organization. So those are the 4 things I would say to start with when you are thinking about leveraging a data science driven culture in your organization. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm happy to take questions offline, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika Jayasundara Bevira. Dr. Radhika, a proud Sri Lankan, our audience is absolutely delighted to see you live from Silicon Valley, California, USA. And also, it's an honor to witness your presence at the 11th CPM International Management Conference 2024.
Esteem Forum, I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person, although I would love to be there amongst you at this conference. So as closing remarks, I just want to share, like I said, data and data science is no longer a strategic advantage for companies and in management. It is becoming more and more a necessity just to stay on par with competition. So I really hope we, in Sri Lanka, we can start leveraging data and data science for our management practices, and also use it as a catalyst for the strategic resurgence that we are trying to enable. So thank you so much again for having me, and I hope to see you all in person someday at this conference. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika Jayasundara Bevira, who brought great pride to our motherland. And she's actually the director of the Data Science and Meta USA. So thank you once again. And now to move to for closing remarks, to deliver the closing remarks and to discuss the technical overview. Now I invite Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka, the chairman of the conference technical sessions and governing council member of CPM Sri Lanka, to the podium.
I wish to draw your attention to that the screen, the deep dive, which is deep dive and coming up, which has a metaphorical connection to the conference theme, the strategic resurgence, the steering Sri Lanka's management landscape. So good morning, chief guest, the special guest speaker joining from Meta USA, the president and the founder of CPM Sri Lanka, and the governing council members, the panel chair speakers, the panelists, and all other distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Well, in my closing remarks, I would like to highlight 3 facets of my discussion. So let's get into the strategic management landscape. So if you look at strategic management landscape, when you're looking at multiple speakers, people such as Rich Howard, so they love to talk about the qualities of strategic thinkers. So in fact, he has postulated the 4 different scenarios of strategic thinking in line with 2 parameters. So by taking a metaphorical setting of the beach and the dive, so he has taken this impact of insight from low to high. It is not up, it's down, deeper. At the same time, the frequency of insights, that is also low to high. So looking at 4 scenarios. The first set of strategic thinkers, it is called beach bumps. They're at the surface, doing nothing, looking around, not having a depth of what is happening, going on, and no understanding about the realistic scenarios. Whereas the other categories, they get into the water, but they are more snorkelers. They're at the surface level, surfing, but not depth, but having a fair idea of touching the water. The third category is scuba divers. They're a little bit deeper, like sometimes consultants, go hang around, go into a depth, but not depth enough. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth scenario is this, the deep dive. So that is the impact of insights, high. The frequency of insights, high. You hold the breath, manage your oxygen, go deep, and come back. I think in that light, what the CPM has introduced this 11th CPM International Conference this year, because Sri Lanka has crossroads, as the keynote speaker also highlighted. So in that light, so we need to see that deep dive and coming out. So with that, let me come to my second area. So if we dissect this meaning of strategic resurgence and steer in Sri Lanka's management landscape, the wording. Friends, what does that mean, the strategic resurgence? It leads collaboration in terms of to advance transformative initiatives and systems that promotes determination and commitment towards countries' growth and success. As a nation, what we are looking for? We are looking for creating an ecosystem of suppliers, producers, particularly he has also highlighted that small and medium-sized enterprises to produce the country's needs, the country's requirements, and of course value creation. From best management practices points of view, in all spheres, it is vital and critical because it strengthens the governance via better anti-bribery corruption frameworks, aligning the regulations, and getting this, setting the tone for the country's requirement. In that light, what we are looking at in terms of the strategic lineup, that's my third area. This conference is all about. So looking at the first domain, that is what we are experiencing now, the first session, the macro perspectives. I think starting from the president, while highlighting the governance, accountability, and the role of implicit role of CPM, and the keynote speaker has highlighted the macro diverse perspectives of bringing the metaphor of the doctor and the patient. That's what Sri Lanka is looking for, particularly this year. I think it's a vital juncture. At the same time, while he's concluding his talk, and which is connected to our special guest who is joining from USA Meta, bringing that data science. But what she is advising at the end, start small, take it to the next. It's not a strategic imperative, but it's the way. In terms of soon after the tea, like you will be moving to the session 2, where you are going to look at that configuring and reshaping the management practices and applications. So for that purpose, we have invited 2 Sri Lankans who are differing, like performing. One is a Sri Lankan veteran, the other one is joining from Australia. So he has done wonders in Australian setting and 16 other countries at multiple arena in terms of configuring and reshaping these management practices and applications. And along with the 2 other panelists, so we are going to witness that aspect. Then, ladies and gentlemen, the post-lunch, the first session, as we have witnessed last night, the best management practices. So as I have simply defined it, the most effective and practical means of designing and implementing various applications in companies. So we want to see best of the best. So that's one of the purpose. I think the chief guest also highlighted the Japanese, the imperative philosophical psyche is that doing good for doing a better society. So that the better effective practices, not only for us, it is to share among others. So that's what you are going to witness in the afternoon in the session 3. So the difference is that at the competition time, they have had compelling 10 minutes. But today, we have invited them to extend that to 15 minutes, adding color and glamour. So of course, we love to see that, what they are doing in such respective conditions and what they have done and what are the key takeaways for us to go and implement co-opetition, together winning everyone. And the fourth final area, I think it's a vital connection in terms of the whole thing into the final session. That is where two brief speeches there. One is again from two Sri Lankans. One is making that digital inclusivity into a larger context coming from MasterCard, and the good friend who is joining from Auckland, New Zealand, all the way to talk about management resilience. So while having that, we have showcasing two ladies who are joining along with Dr. Bamunu Singh in the afternoon to look at the innovative insights, inclusivity, and of course bringing outside-in perspectives to steer the way forward. That is what we are looking at. I'm sure we are eagerly looking for that final session to look at this convergence of ideas of this big picture into a reality. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, what I want to tell you that this 11th CPM conference is looking for not only to deep dive, and we have to think very seriously how to come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka, the chairman of the conference technical sessions and the governing council member of the CPM Sri Lanka. So now to hand over the token of appreciation to the chief guest and the chairman of the conference technical sessions, we now invite Professor Lakshman R. Vatawala, Mr. Kusla Disanayaka, Mr. Hinanayaka Bandara, and Mr. Dilshan R. Gunaratna to the stage. May I now invite our chief guest and our keynote speaker today, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro. Mr. Katsuki Kotaro receiving the token of appreciation from Professor Lakshman R. Vatawala, founder chairman of the CPM Sri Lanka. And also I'd like to invite Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka, the chairman of the conference technical sessions and the governing council member of CPM Sri Lanka. Professor Vatawala to hand over the token of appreciation to Dr. Samantha Ratnayaka. And also like to invite Mr. Dilshan R. Gunaratna, Director CPM Sri Lanka, to hand over the token of appreciation to Professor Lakshman R. Vatawala, the founder, the chairman of the CPM Sri Lanka. I would request the dignitaries to remain at the stage as we move on to the official presentation of the CPM official journal, Chartered Manager, the February 2024 issue. So for that, I'd like to invite the following resource persons who contributed to the journal. The feature interview, the topic Sustainable Economic Growth Through a People-Centric Digital World, Mr. Sandun Hapugoda, the Country Manager, Sri Lanka and Maldives MasterCard. And the feature interview, the leveraging technology to impact on the Sri Lankan economy. Mr. Nalin Edrisinghe, CEO, Pan Asia Banking Corporation PLC, As Mr. Nalin Adiri Singh is not available, so there is a representative from the Pan Asia Bank to receive the journal. The next is the feature interview, Finance and Banking in a Digital World. Mr. Conrad Dias, the chairman, LOLC Finance PLC. Feature interview, Challenges and Opportunities of Digital Transformation. Mrs. Mahesha Amarasuriya, Director, MasterCard Sri Lanka. Feature interview, Digital Transformation Trends in Advanced Countries. Dr. Upendra Piris, Chief Executive Officer, Oral IT. The feature interview, the next, the digital transformation in healthcare, advancing wellness and accessibility. Mr. Sujit Samarthivakara, Founder Director, Group Chairman at Technomedics International Private Limited and Group Chairman at JF&I Packaging Private Limited. As Mr. Sujit Samarthivakara is not available, there's a representative from the Technomedics International Private Limited to receive the CPM Official Journal Chartered Manager. And also I'd like to mention the members who are not present today and which they contributed in this feature interview. Can digital transformation create a level playing field? By Professor Malik Ranasinghe, Chairman ICTA. And the next feature interview, How to Speed Up Your Digital Transformation, Mr. Janaka Abesinghe, CEO, Sri Lanka Telecom. And the next, the interview, A Foundational Technological Education for Rapid Economic Change, Dr. D.M.A. Kulasurya, Director General, NIBM. So now, recognizing the sponsors of the conference. So I would like to invite our platinum partner, MasterCard. Our platinum partner is MasterCard. Mr. Sadhu Hapagoda receiving. And the exclusive print and digital media partner, Daily Mirror and Daily FT of Vijay Newspapers Limited. Yes. Exclusive print and digital media partner, Daily Mirror and Daily FT of Vijay Newspapers Limited. And the strategic partners, Life Insurance Lanka Limited. Strategic partners, Life Insurance Lanka Limited. and Technomedics Private Limited. Strategic partners, the Technomedics Private Limited. Now I invite you all for a group photograph. So thank you all. Thank you very much. And also a special thanks to Dr. Radhika Jayasundara Abevira, Director Data Science, Meta USA.